You never would guess who we have here in the Love Zone once again. We have the eloquent, the loquacious, the revelator, the unofficial mayor of Atlantic City, Mr. Steve Young. You're in for a treat. Don't go anywhere. Stay right there in front of your screen. So stay smooth, stay cool, stay well. We'll see you. Mr. Young, just to add as an addendum to our interview here this morning, I'd like to read from you from the restrictive law of Islam, which is our success. And we all know that you are a practicing Muslim and that you follow the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad under the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And I like to read this because you have sacrificed much. And based upon what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan teaches us, he tells us, sacrifice is the thing that brings you closer to God. And the greatest of all sacrifice is to sacrifice your will and your desires on the altar of God for his purpose. And you have done exactly that, Mr. Young. The harder you work, the more you work, the closer to God you become, and the more blessed you are. We thank you, and we honor you, and we encourage you to keep up the fight, and we're in the fight with you. Don't think you're in the fight alone. You got it from the Love Zone. This is Michael Lovejoy. Over and out. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Love Zone once again. You never guess who we have here in the Love Zone once again. We have the eloquent, the loquacious, the revelator, the unofficial mayor of Atlantic City, Mr. Steve Young. How you doing, Mr. Young?
Fine, sir.
We're so glad to have you once again here in the Love Zone since our last get together. Mr. Steve Young has been a world traveler. You were down in Baltimore doing the riots, am I correct?
Oh, absolutely. The riots, went to the barber shops, went on the streets, went where the army wouldn't go. That's where we went when we went to Baltimore.
Yes, sir. Now, just touching on that a little bit, mister, were you there on a goodwill mission?
Oh, definitely. To make sure our people wasn't going to be shot down, beat down, but now in our presence.
Yes, sir. Now, what did you see, what did you hear when you entered Baltimore?
Well, basically what we hear all over the country, you know, the oppression from the people that cannot be heard, it just build up. And the people that is at the table do not look like us, but yet making decisions for us. And what happens when the young people don't have that outlet to bring about change, they bring about violence. And when you bring about violence, that seems to be the only way this country even listens to you. When you start turning over cars or burning down buildings, then they want to listen to you.
Well, you know, this country was founded on the principle of violence. And violence is bred into the culture and the very fabric of this country. Am I correct?
That's absolutely correct. That's one thing that Dr. Martin Luther King had learned during his last days on this earth, when he was fighting for the workers, the trash men.
In Memphis, Tennessee.
In Memphis, Tennessee, that's correct.
Now, Mr. Young, you are the president of the South Jersey chapter of NAN, otherwise known as the National Action Network. Am I correct?
Yes.
How long have you been a member of the National Action Network?
Well, the National Action Network was founded with Reverend Al Sharpton back in 1992. I met Reverend Sharpton in 1990 when we blocked off the expressway and actually shut down every business here in Atlantic City. So then in 2009, I said, well, this is the only active organization that I actually see doing some work. And Reverend Sharpton is still being consistent with what he's doing. So we started a chapter right here in New Jersey. We was the first chapter. Now we have over 5 chapters in New Jersey alone.
Now, for the people that want to know out there in the Love Zone, can you tell us where are those chapters here in New Jersey or in South Jersey?
Sure. You have a chapter in Asbury Park, Newark, Jersey City, Camden, Atlantic City, so they both south and north, and as well as north.
So you all work together on a platform for the Action Network that you all come together and work out through the differences.
Oh, absolutely. When one in trouble, we all in trouble.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, what does the National Action Network stand for?
Well, basically, it was picking up the torch from Dr. Martin Luther King of having an action organization to pick up the work of nonviolence, as well as, police brutality, voting rights, equal protection, and security for everyone. Basically, the freedom, justice, and equality equally for everyone to be accepted.
Is that what prompted you to get involved with the National Action Network?
Oh, absolutely. What got me involved was, seeing Reverend Sharpton and seeing the things we was doing in Atlantic City. I was doing them as an individual and as someone that was trying to organize the people to wake up to what was the reality of what was going on. And at the same time, we brought Reverend Sharpton there a few times, so he was able to gather more support to what we was doing.
Now, through listening to the Honorable Mr. Louis Farrakhan, was brought to the understanding in the last 2 years of Dr. King's life, he had undergone a tremendous transformation. Are you aware of that?
Oh, definitely aware of it.
Can you enlighten some of those who don't know what his transformation was and approximately what was it about in the last 2 years of his life?
Well, the last 2 years of his life was the most interesting one because it was about, the protection of our community and where the direction this country was going and its violent ways of killing our people and slaughtering our people and the oppression. And when we tried to do it peacefully, we still wasn't being heard. And every time Dr. Martin Luther King and others would go towards voting rights or something else, by the time it got to Congress and the Senate and the President signed, it was a whole different bill. So it kept us still enslaved to the slave master. So Dr. Martin Luther King saw that and said, wait a minute, but you're not hearing us when we're at the table with you and we're doing it in a nonviolent way. Maybe we need to look at what Malcolm is doing and what others was doing and raise up and start fighting you back with fire and fire. And those are the things that a lot of people, especially the FBI and others, when they seen Dr. Martin Luther King starting to wake up and been to the mountaintop and seeing what was actually there, it was like, wait a minute, he has to go. And that's what actually got him killed. But he had to fulfill his purpose. He knew what his purpose was from God to send him here.
Now, just to wrap up on this now, what you said that he began to wake up. He was asleep at one point, talking about integration and nonviolence and whatnot, and then he woke up to what reality in your estimation?
Well, my estimation, Dr. Martin Luther King was a religious man and Christianity. And what happened was, Christianity and religion can actually enslave you in a way. So he was actually seeing how he was being enslaved to actually think that you got to turn the other cheek to actually get somewhere in life. So when he saw that every time he turned the other cheek, more children was dying, more people was being slaughtered in the community, more people actually still being hung, he said, wait a minute, this has to change. So he rose up and woke up and said, wait a minute, this is not going to change until we start fighting back.
Now, one of the methods in his last speech, I understand, at the Masonic Temple there in Memphis, he talked about economic withdrawal.
Absolutely.
Talk about Seal Test ice cream, Coca-Cola, and a couple of bread companies and whatnot. Can you inform our people about the economic awareness of Dr. King?
Yes, the economic awareness, it goes all back way through slavery. When they said we had our 40 acres and our mule. Yeah, they may have gave us a few acres of land, but we couldn't cultivate the land, and we need the machinery to cultivate the land. We had to get it from the white man. And the white man said, well, we're going to rent this out to you and at a cost. And if you don't pay that cost, then you have to give us back the land. And that's the trigonometry that happens throughout this whole country still today. So what Dr. Martin Luther King was talking about, that check that was cashed with insufficient funds. And that's what we have today in Atlantic City and everywhere. We have the insufficient funds that we in debt of trillions and trillions of dollars today.
Yes, sir. Now, the economic withdrawal. We saw that right up through the celebration of the 20th anniversary of the Million Man March, because CNN, CNBC was prognosticating that they are predicting a shortfall in the sales during the Christmas season. Walmart's closed, Macy's closed, due to the economic non-participation that took place this year, or 2015 Christmas, I should say. Dr. King had that program that he was going to institute at that time in Memphis.
That's correct.
Could you elaborate a little bit on that, sir?
Yeah, Dr. Martin Luther King, and I would say Reverend Sharpton, and definitely the Million Man March, actually proved that the boycotts work. When you start hitting them in their pocket, they start to listen to you. And that's what we all must understand. Economics that we control, even in our own small communities, even in the corner store, if we stop shopping there, they're going to start want to listen to us, because they would lose their business. If they lose their businesses, they lose their homes, they lose their future and their legacy. So what about our legacy? So that economic withdrawal is the only thing we have in a peaceful protest that exists today. And that Million Man March, one thing it did with BET and others and that wasn't involved in Macy's and other companies, it actually took them out of business because we stopped shopping there. And locally, we've been stopped shopping in some of the local businesses downtown in our cities that don't look like us, but taking all the dollars out of our communities.
Yes, sir. Now, just recently, you led a boycott of a store in Atlantic City that, from what I understand, was due to the disrespect of the black women in the community that participated with that store. Am I correct?
Absolutely correct.
Are they open at this time?
Yeah, they're open at this time, and what happens is that this young lady, 30 years old, African American, she went to a store. She always goes to the store. She went there to ask for change. The young man that was in there of another ethnicity started disrespecting her, telling her, I'm not giving you no change, start cussing her out and calling, saying that she wasn't Muslim and she's a bitch, basically. And so all these type of things he started saying, so she ran to us. When she said, look, he disrespected her, we gathered with less than a half an hour, close to 40 people in front of that store and shut it down. We told him, you have to shut it down now. The owner came, we said we want him fired or out of that store right now. And that actually happened. This was the first time in Atlantic City that I've known of, since our generation, that we actually shut down the business that was disrespecting a black woman. And we're letting them know we're not going to have that anymore. You take the monies out of our community, you do not give back, you take the money to educate your children overseas and somewhere else while ours are still oppressed, and you're going to oppress our women who raise our children. We're not having it anymore.
Now,
So
did that message resonate with the rest of the businesses that are owned by foreigners on the avenue in Atlantic City?
Absolutely. Some of the foreigners was from Bangladesh, and they was from India and so forth. Owned a lot of businesses in Atlantic City. Used to be the Chinese and the Koreans, now it's the Bangladesh and the Indians. Well, basically what had happened, they got in touch with the imam from the masjid to bring about peace and wanted to sit down to talk to us. So we were basically saying, no, this has been going on too long in our communities, and it's not going to go along no more. So we offered to give them some type of training, sensitivity training to their young people towards how you deal with our culture, because their culture is very demeaning sometimes to some of the females throughout in their communities as well as ours.
Yeah, it's a male-dominated society, and a lot of the foreign cultures that come over here, they still are male-dominated, and they've run into problems, many of them in their community, with their females who are seeking education, parity in jobs, etc. You know what I mean? And they run into a problem when they encounter our black woman, who is the freest woman on the planet Earth.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Now, Mr. Young, let's deal with the Atlantic City issue. Thank you for your treatise on Dr. King and the other issues we talked about. Now, the Atlantic City issues are at the top of the news charts, as you already know. AC has the highest foreclosure rate in the state, followed by Trenton, a close second. And Atlantic County is the first in the state and in the country in foreclosures. New Jersey is number one, according to realtytrack.com. What is that triggered the wave of foreclosures in Atlantic City and Atlantic County?
Well, the word is gentrification. Basically, gentrification to get rid of most of the black folks that actually live back and move back into our cities, especially Atlantic City.
Now, for the people that are unlearned now, that don't know, gentrification. What is gentrification?
Gentrification, plainly, is when there's a minority group that's actually occupying a space especially like black folks. We are mostly occupying the space economically, socially, politically, and so forth. And when white folks wants to come in and move you out, they will do gentrification, such as foreclosures, making crime go up, different things like that. Those are the tactics they use to gentrify those communities.
So you're saying that the gentrification trick is to foster crime, foster drugs, gun violence, and unemployment?
Yes, we got to look at absolutely right. We got to look at the history of New Jersey.
Well, let's talk about it.
New Jersey was the last state to get rid of slavery. The last state. Why is it the last state?
Was New Jersey the last state?
Within the whole entire, out of 50 states, the last state to get rid of slavery. Why is that? Because they did not want to let go of the slaves that they had in up north. And that says a lot to the economy here and what's going on today. Because you still have the powers that be that's been still there through the Constitution, through Assembly, through a Senate, and so forth, and through governors after governors that want to dictate and oversee the black folks in most of the communities throughout New Jersey, such as Camden, such as Trenton, such as Asbury Park, such as Newark. Most majority elected officials are there are black, but yet the overseer, they have monitors to say, well, we're going to oversee your monies and how it's being run, to bring it down to saying economically you cannot run your communities.
Hold on, Mr. Young. Hold on, Mr. Young. Now, hold on, Mr. Young. Now, you said a lot. Now, I'm thinking here. Is that what's going on in Pleasantville at this particular moment?
Oh, absolutely.
Explain to us, please, so the Lovejoy audience and the LoveZone will know exactly what you mean.
Well, basically, when you have the mostly elected officials, whether it's from the Board of Education or whether it's from the cities of that city, whether it's mayor, council, so forth, that the people, the majority of people elected that's black and the majority that's there is black. They have to do something with that type of power, because now you started looking at, well, wait a minute, we control that, but what about the economics? What about creating millionaires and businesses that do business with the Board of Education, that do business with those cities? So they can't control that. So white folks will bring in the power from the state constitution that says the state can oversee what you do and monitor what you do. So you have to get approval from your minutes of your meetings in order to say you can hire somebody or you can give away a contract. So actually you are a slave to the state. And that's what mostly happens with Board of Educations and minority communities, as well as the cities and minority communities.
Well, is that what got Christie such a dander up in Trenton? That he has these powers that he can play with to be the overseer of the communities, and by him being at the top of government in the state of New Jersey, that he be the overseer over the communities that are basically majority African American?
Oh, absolutely. And he has a lot of people that he gives businesses to through education that he networked with, such as Norcross. You have a whole Norcross family.
Which Norcross?
Norcross, you have George Norcross, you had Donald Norcross. Now they are elected officials in Congress and in the Senate. Now they're elected officials as well as they support everything that's in education in Camden, and mostly Atlantic City, and mostly in Newark. And so what happens when they start controlling that, the next thing you know, they want to control your water. Now if they control how you drink and the fees that you pay on your water, because you cannot flush money, you cannot flush oil, you have to flush water. And these are things you have to drink in order to survive. So if they control that, in every country since the beginning of time, this is how they actually control the people through the water. If you look at Africa right now today, you look at who controls the infrastructure of their water system coming in and out, and you can see it's mostly the white folks that control it, and that's the new gold, and that's the new oil that we must look at today.
I read an article, there's a gentleman down in Texas by the name of T. Boone Pickens. Have you ever heard of Mr. Pickens? He's the one that bought the aquifers in Texas up in the Panhandle that connects Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, all them states. He owned the water rights. And like you said, the new gold is H2O. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the revelator here, Mr. Steve Young, from the National Action Network, who's given us the inside scoop on the political scene in Atlantic City. And we're going to take a station ID, and we'll be back in 2 and 2 here in the Love Zone. I'm Michael Lovejoy. See you in 2 and 2. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here with the second installment of the In the Love Zone here with the National Action Network president of South Jersey, Mr. Steve Young. He's given us some revelations, ladies and gentlemen, that we haven't had before. And right here in the Love Zone is where you can get your information. I reached out to all of my rap brothers up in North Jersey, up in Camden, up in Philadelphia, wherever you may be. This is your home, the Love Zone. Give me a call so we can schedule and get to talking. Atlantic City is up for sale, Mr. Young. And AC per press.com, the real estate market has bottomed out, and the speculators have swooped in and buying up the homes for pennies on the dollar. In 2008, lots sold for $44.05 per square foot. In 2015, according to Weikert's Realty, it goes for $11.55 per square foot. Who is buying up Atlantic City in your eyesight, Mr. Young?
Well, the history of Atlantic City is very interesting, especially in the black community. You know, we mostly every major community had their own Black Wall Street. In Harlem, you had 125th Street. In Washington, D.C., you had Howard University, that area. And in Atlantic City, you had Kentucky Avenue. We had the Club Harlem with the flower shops. Everybody, the dollars circulated in our community and stayed in our community because that's who owned the property, who owned the businesses, who owned those type of things. And you could, when you own something, you can sustain yourself. And you want to depend on government to do for you. So what happened was, when the casinos started coming, the government, mostly through Casino Reinvestment Development Authority, through eminent domain, started taking the majority of the properties that was owned, whether it was a bar or a club or whatever that was bringing in the economy that black folks owned, started taking it away through eminent domain and kept that property mostly vacant up until today. And what happened was, most of the licenses went to the casinos for liquor, to serve liquor, which they gave away free when you're up there. So this is the type of enemy and evilness that we have. And this created the economy to go down in our community, but to go up in the casino industry. So the casinos actually saved this money. All the money that's supposed to went in the city and go to the state, the state gave it back to the casinos to expand to bigger hotel rooms, bigger parking lots. At the same time, our communities were still being oppressed, and we were still just being the maids to make the bids.
I remember when Don King came to Atlantic City, and he said, I think it was early on in his first forays into putting on spectacular shows here in Atlantic City, where he didn't know about the disparaging difference between one side of Pacific Avenue and the other. And it was asked of him, or he asked, what was it that he could do? And you're absolutely correct, sir. We just found out that Boyd Gaming is selling 50% share of the Borgata for $900 million. $900 million, almost $1 trillion, Mr. Young. Now, my next question to you, sir, is $180 million is owed to Borgata in tax refunds. How did this happen?
Well, basically, how this happened was the city of Atlantic City at that point when Don King was here, Donald Trump was here, everybody was making money. So the amount of money that the casinos being assessed for their properties was very high at the time because it was based on those millions and billions of dollars you're talking about. So what happened was they appealed. That means they challenged what the taxes was. So that's what brought about in 2008. along with the recession, along with the other things, casino gambling in Philadelphia and so forth. So that was when they started appealing their assessment. The judge sided with them because they had, it's about interpretation. Law is about interpretation. So interpretate the best interpretator was the casinos, not the city lawyers. So that's when they appealed, and they said, well, the judge said, well, you owe, telling the city, you owe them taxes because they overpaid you. So by the city overpaying them, somebody has to get that money back.
Well, hold on a second now. Wouldn't you think that somebody would pump the brakes and say, hold on, something is supremely wrong here? $180 million in refunds that they overpaid in taxes?
Absolutely.
And they have to give that money back?
That's correct. And then we got to look at it. When the first appeal was done, I believe it was 2008, we were going through a transition at the time with our mayors. One mayor had resigned because he was involved with some type of corruption.
You talking about Mayor Levy?
Mayor Levy. And at the same time, we had a part-time mayor, the council president,
Mr. Marsh,
for 30 days. Remember this time now. During that time period, a Trump casino, Taj Mahal, was saying, well, we appealed, we went to court, and we want, you owe us $40 million. Well, during that
30-day
period, the acting mayor, William Marsh, signed it and said, here's your $40 million with no questions asked. So that was the beginning of the appeal process for the other casinos. So we want ours too. So that's what started the whole ball rolling with most of these appeals.
Now, I don't want to say this about our brother, Mr. Marsh now. Mr. Marsh is a wonderful public servant. But I need to ask you, Mr. Young. In our last interview, you said it was time for Mr. Marsh to step down in our last interview. Now, if he gave $40 million away without no questions asked, do you think they spiked the Kool-Aid that he was drinking?
Well, some of us actually, black folks, believe in, if they're not woke, they're asleep. And when you are asleep and you have that type of power, then you're enslaved to them. So I believe that, and I'm saying outright, that he's a slave to them. In other words, he feared them more than they fear us. And that's the problem about accountability, not being your friend, but being accountable to the position that you said that you as a public servant and going to serve us as a people. Because not only did the appeals go through, also the police contracts was given out then to last the next 12 years. So these contracts are what we're dealing with now with collective bargaining with these police officers retiring with over $200,000. And sick time and compensation and so forth. So all these things, happen within that 30-day period, which is very interesting that we are suffering for now today.
I had talked to the urban entrepreneur, Mr. Darrell Scott, 2 weeks ago, and he had reiterated exactly what you said in reference to how could someone work in Atlantic City 25 years and never be sick? And cash in sick time, $150,000 in sick time, and comp time, and whatever kind of time you have. I mean, the cash cow, which is Atlantic City, is dead. Am I true?
Well, I would look at the Borgata, Tropicana. Some of these casinos still making money. But the money from the luxury taxes, from parking and so forth, all those fees go straight to Trenton, to the governor's office, and they dictate where the money's being spent, and they don't spend it here. Usually in other cities, if the taxes are there, if it's whether it's hotel fees, luxury taxes, or even taxes on parking, it will stay within that municipality. And these are the things that our elected officials should have been asking for. One thing you mentioned about Don King. Don King, when he came here in 1990, him, Mike Tyson, and Reverend Sharpton, when I first met him, he said, I flew in a helicopter with Donald Trump from New York to here, and he said, he asked, well, how black folks being treated? He said it was all right. But when I brought him here on the ground, him, Don King, Reverend Sharpton, Don King, and Mike Tyson, I walked them through the housing projects. I walked them through the hotels where people was homeless and had nowhere to stay at. And when they seen the oppression And the black folks being treated like that, Reverend Shopton said, what do you need us to do? And so did Don King. And they were very supportive on having over 2,000 people in wheelchairs, bikes, strollers, on the expressway to shut the money down. And the busloads of us was arrested because of that. But I wanted to say that because if you're not on the ground and you don't see what's going on, then you think everything is all right.
He's called the Revelator, Mr. Steve Young from the National Action Network here in South Jersey, ladies and gentlemen. It's a wonderful feeding that we're having here today, Steve. I want you to continue because I'm getting fat and heavy as you're speaking. Thanks for feeding me. Trenton's desire to take control of Atlantic City and its government functions. Where did this have its genesis? The C.R.D.A, why is it tax exempt? And do you think that status aids in the hamstringing of the finances of Atlantic City?
Absolutely. If you own over 600 properties in Atlantic City and you're not paying taxes on it, but yet our forefathers and most of the black people that's been here the most who own their properties, they don't pay a mortgage, but they have to pay taxes in order to have that house. But if your taxes is $200 or $300 a month and it goes to $3,000 a month, how's a grandmother or a mother is going to sustain those type of taxes that was more than what a mortgage was? And if you don't pay it, that's when your houses get foreclosed on. And it's a shame that our older people in Atlantic City cannot leave a legacy of something that they own here in Atlantic City. And that's why it's a gentrification, because when you take the property, the last bit of property just that a legacy or someone had used and fought for and died for and suffered and with their health, who working so hard for so many years, and you have nothing to leave, then you cannot do nothing but leave out of the community because there's nowhere else to go. But also, we should have been having a plan in our community, a plan to help sustain ourselves, to economically keep the dollars circulating in our community, owning the properties and owning businesses. And we were great, three things we're great in. That's entertainment. When it comes to sports, music, when it comes to our food and our hospitality, we're the best as black people. Why not use that talent to have our own communities where they're going to come to and spend their dollars, and that dollar stays in our community, and that way we can hire who we want. The crime goes down because there's no need of going out and robbing nobody, because I'm going to give you a job and offer you a job whether you have a record or not. And those are those second chances, and that's the thing that we need to do, be building in every community throughout the United States. And I went to the White House and I met with the president. And his staff, I told his staff just that. I said, we need trophies in our communities. When I go back to my community, when I met with him in 2011, I said, where's the trophies? Where's the trophies that we can hang on our shoulder and go back to our community and say, this is what the president has done, this is what the White House has done, this is what has happened, and this is what we're going to use to help rebuild our communities. I said, Wall Street been built out, the hotel industry been built out, everybody been built out but our black communities. So when is it going to come time to build us out? And here's the plan for us to do it. So economically, there is a plan. We need to start implementing it and bringing those black dollars together so we can, like Minister Farrakhan been saying for years, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's plan.
Economic blueprint.
Economic blueprint. We need to be using that today.
Yes, sir.
And I think all of this is happening to bring us to that time.
Absolutely.
We're here now, and we're an example in Atlantic City because this is the most evil place that is on the planet Earth. We have casino gambling, legally and illegally. We have prostitution. We have crime. We have corruption. We have everything. And we even had Donald Trump and Christie. So if we can survive out of here, we will bring a blueprint throughout the whole country of how to show you how to deal with those.
Absolutely, sir. Well said. I know that the ears are burning right now. He's called the Revelator, Steve Young. Trenton's desire of a stripped down city government. And what does that look like?
It looks like slaves in the field, which would be the black people. and the plantation owner will be in the plantation's house, which would be the governor's mansion. And basically, what we would be doing is having the opportunity to have elected officials to vote for them without them having a vote into spending, into contracts, and so forth. So that's taking away our civil rights that mostly Dr. Martin Luther King and others died for. So our vote don't count when they're going to select somebody that don't look like us, that don't live here, and make a decision for us. And this is what's going on today. They already took over.
Is this similar to what happened in Detroit?
Absolutely.
Similar to what happened in Camden?
Absolutely.
Newark is on the horizon for that kind of takeover at this particular time. Now, the state is encroaching on all levels of the areas and different cities in the state. This encroachment that's happening in AC, do you think that the people in Trenton, such as Stephen Sweeney, who is he?
Well, we went up and I spoke at the Senate hearing when they was talking about the Senate budget hearing. When they was talking about this AC takeover bill, S11. And one thing we were actually doing, putting a face on Atlantic City and what it looks like. So I was getting grassroots down to saying, if President Barack Obama would do what the state of New Jersey is doing to Atlantic City, it'd be a civil war. Because you're talking about taking away our sovereignty and our voting rights. You're talking about collective bargaining for us to bargain for a decent job. And you're talking about taking away our water. Then when I started speaking truth to power, that's when they actually tapped me on the shoulder and told me I was going to be arrested.
Arrested for?
For civil disobedience and actually for using my constitutional right of freedom of speech and freedom of assembly in that hearing room, basically saying the things that should have been said years ago, and I was putting truth to power.
Now, you were charged with a petty offense, am I correct?
Petty disorderly offense of speaking out and redressing our government that we pay taxes.
Now, let me ask you, Mr. Sweeney, is he a friend of Atlantic City?
Absolutely not. Anyone who does a bill about taking away the sovereignty of people's vote, especially when the majority of the community has been suffering the most is the black community. The majority community that's been suffering the most through taxes and everything else, and stayed the longest is the black community. Then if you're taking away from us and you're white and you're Caucasian, you asking the rest of your Caucasian people that's on the Senate with you to help you with this bill, then we have a serious problem with you. You're not for Atlantic City.
Then who are his constituents? His constituents evidently think like him.
You're absolutely right. And again, after that vote, and after I got arrested, and it started going viral, or look, putting a face on what was going on, and I was talking to the Senate after they had made their vote, they were actually looking at it and said, wait a minute, he has a point here. If it happens to Atlantic City, it happened to their community. So what happened was, when it came to the Assembly, which is another branch of the government, the Assembly basically said, wait a minute, we're going to halt this and we're going to write something else. So basically what they did is say to give 150 days for the city to get its act together. Well, and you know what they did at the same time that people don't realize? They took out the clause that says this is for Atlantic City only and not for other municipalities. So it wasn't touching them, so they was able to vote for it.
The Revelator Steve Young. John the Revelator ain't got nothing on you today, Mr. Young. Chris Brown, who is he?
Well, Chris Brown, I can say he's an assembly person, has been very active, and the only one that's actually from this area. He has a business in Atlantic City, he's a lawyer and so forth, that spoke out against Atlantic City takeover.
Is he a friend of Atlantic City?
I would say yes.
Who are his constituents?
His constituents are a lot of people in the community, such as the NAACP is very, they get along very well. He has a lot of constituents in education, as well as in businesses and law firms and so forth. But he had to climb a hill to fight for the people that wouldn't even fight for themselves. And he gained a lot from that recognition because it was fighting the government as well as we was. But at the same time, he lost a lot through some of his constituents that he was on the assembly with. So now, he played a very powerful position.
Yes, sir. Now, this is the last question in this segment, Mr. Young, and I want to ask you this. I saw a picture of when you were asked to leave the chambers, and there were two troopers standing in front of you, and one was standing right in front of you. You had your hands crossed in front of you, and he was, I guess, talking to you or reading you the riot act. What was that all about?
Basically, I was asking him, what law did I break? And where is it written that I could not go back in there, and who authorized it? He could not answer none of those questions. So during that time, I said, well, if you can't answer those questions, then why am I being arrested? He said, not at this point. But if you go back in there, I said, well, if I go back in there, then you're saying that I cannot have freedom of assembly or freedom to redress my government. And I said, if you take away that from me, and they talk about taking away my water and jobs and employment and our voting rights, I have nothing else to live for. So you do what you have to do. And that's when he handcuffed me and took me over to the state building and fingerprinted me. And I was held for like 3 hours because they had to create the charges. And I went to court 4 times, and the 5th time would be July the 5th, which is the day after this country's Independence Day. And I know that will be the day of our independence when they dismiss these charges of not being able to redress your government or assembly and take away our vote.
Yes, sir, Mr. Steve Young. We're going to take a station ID. I have to recover from some of the bombs that he dropped this morning. And I want you to take a station break, people out there in the Love Zone, and go get some hydration. Because I'm telling you, it's hot in here. We got the lights on, but Steve is shining. We're going to take a station break. We'll be back in 2 and 2. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back here in the wrap-up session of the Love Zone with Mr. Steve Young from the National Action Network, Incorporated here in South Jersey. Mr. Young, you've given us such a eloquent presentation of your platform and your experience in reference to the upheaval and the turmoil that's going on in the state and in Atlantic City. The manner in which the governor of the state, Governor Christie, has gone around the state to push his agenda for Atlantic City is a complete alienation of the citizens of Atlantic City. Would you agree?
Absolutely, yes.
And not to address the Atlantic City citizens about Atlantic City, what is your view on that puzzling fact?
Well, since day one, when Governor Christie first became in office, he came to Atlantic City, and he came on the boardwalk and did a press conference, as well as when he came to the Rebel Casino and gave them over $200 million in order to continue building a $2 billion infrastructure after we were in this type of oppression. And also at the same time, he was dealing with our school and our education. We're bringing monitors in to monitor our education in the minds of our children. So when he came to the boardwalk, he said, well, we're going to take the boardwalk area and divide our community into where the casinos are versus where the community is.
He called that the casino district.
He called it casino district.
Yes.
And the tourism district. When he created tourism district, then he was saying, well, we're going to have police over here, but you're going to pay for them. We're going to have this over here, but you're going to pay for them as a community. And we would not have no input in most of the goings of that. He would say, well, we're going to take away the planning. If someone has to come before planning, we're going to have our own planning board, our own zoning. So he was actually taking over Atlantic City then. And then he went even further to go throughout the whole country talking about Sandy, the storm and everything throughout the whole state. But he would not come to not one town hall meeting in Atlantic City. Now, is it because he feared black folks? I don't know.
Well, let me ask you this question. Lorenzo Langford is still in Atlantic City. Is he fearful of Lorenzo Langford?
I believe so, absolutely. Anyone that stands up to the governor, because his first press conference, I said to him, well, when are you going to come and visit Atlantic City? I stood up and said that to him. And the press was from all over the country then. That's when they was opening up the Revel. So he said, well, are you from the press? I said, no. He said, well, I'm only asking the questions for the press. So that's the bully that you have. When he cannot dictate to you, he'll go around you to try to, bully you in another way. And this is a man that's been degrading our teachers, degrading people on pension, degrading students. He's been degrading everybody, almost worse than Donald Trump. And I think that's what they all have in common as the devil that they are and the devil works that they're doing. And that's why I tell the city council levels, why are you even waiting on the devil to do something for you? Once the devil, he's always one. And if you keep hanging around him, you become one.
Well, Mr. Young, the devil is busy.
Yes.
Steve, we want to thank Almighty God for allowing you to have the opportunity one more time to come and be with us here in the Love Zone. And we would like to give you a moment to wrap up the show, as it has been a minute since our last time since we sat together. So if you have anything that you'd like to say, take 2 minutes and say what you have to say.
Well, first I want to say, give an honor to God and to you, Brother Mike, and the Love Zone, because we need this type of atmosphere and this way of getting out what is actually happening in our communities. Again, we should not have to burn something down to be heard, because the media, we don't control the media, we don't control the airwaves, we don't control those things. So we have to depend on people like you and things like you to edit and talk about the things that happens in our community. So I am honored to be here as your guest to do this. And another thing, everybody, everybody has a talent and a purpose in life. And our goal is to fulfill that purpose. And that's why if you believe in God, then you should not fear no one but God. Moses, Muhammad, and Jesus, what they had in common, and if you want to follow in their footsteps, then you must have no fear. And one thing they did was service their communities in the streets. And these are the things we need to get back to without fear. And I just hope that we leave a legacy now, that our young people will wake up to understand that that's the power that actually exists within them, that power of understanding who their God is and their belief and not fearing no one but God himself.
Well, Mr. Young, we want to thank you for coming and being in the Love Zone once again, as you so eloquently and so loquaciously stated your case. We want to invite you to come back once again once you have some more newsworthy things to tell us and share with us. And we say, as we always do in Brody, don't drive if you drink, and don't drink if you drive, because the life you save may be your own. Stay cool, stay smooth, stay where you are. Later.
Sit there all alone, baby, pick up the phone, call your hitman, and if you think that you just might